Welcome to this edition of Morgan You Asked For podcast. A little bit of a late turn of events. Plan on going live again tonight with Trevor, but he got a something. He texted me about 6:45 and said he can't make it tonight. As we've talked about, we have other responsibilities, so not everything goes according to plan. So we're just doing a regular podcast here, so you'll be able to listen to us on regular podcast and YouTube. It won't be live tonight. I want to thank Zach for stepping in on very short notice. Usually we give him a few days notice, but our um, co-host um, that always comes in and subs for us. We want to thank him a lot. Just a couple things from last week where we did go live on Facebook and YouTube. Had a lot of good responses. Ran into people all weekend doing different things, and they all said I was too much in their feed, which is a good thing. I guess if that's what I'm trying to do is to get this podcast out a little bit more. I know Steph at the Elks said her son was watching TikTok and saw a thing on TikTok, and several people were saying on Facebook and everything. So thank you for those of you that are watching and tuning in. We are trying to do a few more things here. And Zach, I know Zach, you always listen and stuff, so it's always good to hear people. And then I was over at your house last weekend, and Bill and those were talking about it as well. So again, thanks to everybody, and just as always, we'll get this up. Rate, like, subscribe on Spotify, and on Spotify you can see us, kind of like YouTube. But if you do watch or listen on Spotify, you can watch it as well. And then the podcast is also on YouTube, and YouTube is at Morgan You Asked For podcast is our link there. So if you want to tune into that, it'll be up later today or tomorrow morning. I don't know exactly how long it takes to get back up, but I'll load everything up tonight, and it does take a little bit. But again, thanks for coming on, Zach. I know this is always Wednesday, so kind of the reviewing of the Iowa State game we always try to do pretty quick, more preview, just because if you, as a Hawkeye or a Cyclone fan, and you want to have the recap, you've listened, you've talked to your friends, you've already hashed it out. So just real quick, Iowa State won a game 20 to nothing, first time since 1971, road shutout in a conference game, covered the spread, didn't look great, but still came out on top, came out with the win. Everything's still in front of them. That's the real quick synopsis. Rocco Beck needs to play better to start, but he does make the plays later in games for the win, just like he did at Iowa, and he did it at Houston. But we do need a better start the further the season gets down the road, because we're going to be playing some better teams.
Yeah, you took care of business. It was kind of like an Iowa Hawkeye victory. The defense, I thought, kind of carried it all night long, and you did what you have to do. I mean, Iowa State is in a perfect position. I mean, I don't think they even necessarily need to go undefeated. I mean, they need to win the Big 12, and they can probably do that with one, two, maybe two losses. And as an Iowa fan, we're going to need that because obviously we're hoping to be 10-2 with losses to hopefully a top 10 Iowa State team and a one or two Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, they're really, as long as you take care of business, Iowa big underdogs this coming weekend. But if you win that game and you don't get shut out, if you lose this game 40 to 17, it's probably okay. You've proven that your offense is better. Ohio State's really good, and it's better than losing it 30-0. If you score 0 again against Ohio State, it just shows still how far you have to go, and that will not help your playoff cause. Right? So I think you need to score a couple touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, people talk that this Ohio State team might be the greatest team, on paper. I'm not even close to putting them there, but yeah, like you said, I think if Iowa can keep it within 25 and put up, 17 points, over 17, I still think everything's in front of them. A lot would probably hinge on how Ohio State and Iowa State finish, but
You need
just
them. Yeah, you need them to be
just just looking at both of their schedules, I can't see Iowa State losing more than twice and probably not being in the Big 12 championship. I mean, we probably may need them to win it if they had two losses, but hopefully Iowa State can keep rolling. I don't see Ohio State losing more than once, maybe, and that would probably put them right back in the Big Ten championship. And they're going to get in regardless if they have one loss. That's for sure. So a lot depends on two teams and how, like you said, how Iowa looks this week. They're going to have to show a little bit of something on offense. And as good as our running back is, I just think it's still going to be hard to run the ball on all those five-star defensive players. So Cade's going to have to do something and look a lot better than he has in the last year and a half.
Yeah, Ohio State has the players to truly commit 8, 9 players in the box and just say, all right, Cade McNamara and the two receivers, it's one-on-one on the outside. You beat us. And if you do, tip your hat. They'll change their defense. But they're going to have 8 men in the box, and they are not going to let Caleb Johnson run wild. I just don't see it. They've got the athletes to be able to cover outside one-on-one. They don't need safety help. And and until they beat them a couple times deep, I just don't see Ohio State getting out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I just listening to washed up walk-ons here. They would even give the advantage to probably Ohio State in the running game. It's going to come down to if we can, like you said, beat them in one-on-one coverage. As good as our running back is, they're probably going to run the ball better than we do. So we're going to have to do something on the offensive end and probably still force a turnover or two. But yeah, if we can't beat them one-on-one, we're in for a drubbing, and we have really no games in front of us to draw the national attention anymore, unless somehow we could make the Big Ten championship and probably play Ohio State again.
Yeah, that's with, what was it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago that Evans, had the forced fumble, sack, and fumble recovery for a touchdown. You're going to need one of them, especially if your offense isn't doing what it needs to do. If you can get one of them and you can get one big play, there's 14 points, and then you can score one or two, you got a shot. That I don't see another way that Iowa wins that football game.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's expecting us to win. I mean, if they did, it would be one of the biggest upsets in Iowa history. I think it's just a matter of being able to compete because last year I believe we didn't score a point against a ranked team. So
Nope,
um,
92-0, I'm pretty sure, in the games.
we've got to compete, and then if we can compete, that's going to get the fan base going again, and then we just got to start churning out victories.
And is that game at 2:30 on Saturday? Right,
It is.
to CBS. So it'll be
Yes.
Denver and them.
Yep.
Okay. And then Iowa State, kind of flipping back to Iowa State. They play at 6:30 on Big Fox. So big CBS and big Fox. So Iowa is at Ohio State, but Iowa State's in Ames, night game, white out, fireworks, drone. They're wearing white. I call it the stormtrooper uniforms. Um, they're making a big production out of this deal, and Coach McCarney's back in town. Big game, and again, as Zach said earlier, every game for Iowa State just keeps getting bigger and bigger. First time 4-0 since I was in college in 2000. If they could win this one, it's 5-0. I think that's the first time since 1980, which I was barely born in 1980. So I mean, we're talking generations of 2 generations of fans and fandom. In 1980, I was actually living in Ames as a 1-year-old. How about that?
Yeah, you probably don't remember much about
Nope,
that.
I do not. So, but yeah, my dad was just finishing up college in 1980. So, um, yeah, Iowa State. It's another one of those games you'd love to see them get out, win 34-10, something like that. But Iowa State's in a position now you just win. Try to stay healthy and just win, and everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think Iowa State's going to win, but I think you guys are catching Baylor in desperation mode right
Oh,
now.
it's
They've got to win a game, and they're not a bad team. I mean, they can score. They've lost some tight ones. I think you're going to get their best shot. I mean, I'm a horrible better, but if I was betting, I would take Baylor in the points, especially if you could have got them around 14. But
right.
I think it'll be a good game. I think Iowa State's going to pull it out late. I just think Baylor, they lose this, they're done. I mean, they are in full desperation mode right now.
They are, yeah, it's a desperate team. So they got nothing. Was it the Water Boy? I think I heard the reference this week where they got nothing to lose. So it's try every trick play. It's try everything. I think if they lose this game, there's a very high probability that Dave Aranda is fired on Sunday, or maybe even not allowed on the plane, a la Lane Kiffin at USC. Um, they lost on a Hail Mary to Colorado. They lost, a very close game to BYU, and BYU and Colorado are on top of the Big 12. They're ahead of Iowa State right now because they're both 2-0. Iowa State just hasn't played 2 games yet in the Big 12. So they're close to being 4-1 and being Aranda's job is safe and he's getting better and he's doing things the right way, to those 2 losses, one Hail Mary and then lost in overtime. And then they came back. They got down really quick to BYU, I believe, and then came back and made a heck of a game out of it. They're close, and that's the little part that scares you. And then if they're rallying around their coach, they had the dreaded players only meeting this week that you don't ever want to hear happening because it's not going well when those things happen. But sometimes there is a little bit of a jolt when that stuff happens, and I hope it's not enough to trip up Iowa State.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good game to watch. I'm excited to watch that one, like you
I'm not
said.
happy I'm missing it, but it'll be fun on Saturday golfing. So
Baylor, I think Baylor will give you their best, but I'm just not sure it's good enough. So should be a good one to tune into.
absolutely, again, Big Fox. I think Tim Brando's on the call there. I like him, old school. Doesn't he's going to have his cliches and everything. So really, and then kind of finishing up college football and everything. Georgia, Alabama, and as a Big 12 fan and even a Big 10 fan, I think Ohio State can hang with those boys, but those boys are different down there. I don't care what anybody says. Their athletes are just different. That quarterback looks awesome, and he's throwing it up to a 17-year-old Ryan Williams, but he is literally just throwing it up and hoping his guy's better than the other guys. And in this case, and on this Saturday, Ryan Williams was the best player on the field. And he's 17 years old. He should be in high school. And he made the 5-star D-backs at Georgia look absolutely silly with his bobble 3 times and turnaround catch, and then his catch to win the football game. 75-yarder, went up over 2 guys and then made them both miss, and then showed his speed and outran them. And I'd be shocked if those 2 DBs aren't on Sundays as well. And he made them look stupid. And for the arguments that the Big 12 should get as many playoff teams as everybody else, Georgia and Alabama are different. And we've talked about this on the podcast, but I think the biggest travesty of last year's playoff debacle, it wasn't Florida State missing out. It was Georgia. Georgia's the 2-time defending champ and didn't get in the playoff, with their only loss being to Alabama in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with you. I'm sure Michigan was ecstatic to see that Georgia didn't make it, because that was one less team they really need to worry about. And I'm with you. The SEC, those 2 are dominant. I mean, I think their SEC is going to be a lock for 4, and I wouldn't be shocked if they got 5 in this year. And I wouldn't be shocked if Georgia won it all, even after losing that game.
Absolutely. And how about this? I believe I saw the stat. I should have pulled this up, but I didn't. In the last, maybe in his career, but Kirby Smart's lost 6 games to other people and 6 games to Alabama. He's got like 12 losses in his career. He's 1-6 against Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably, the best in the business right now once Saban retired. And but Alabama doesn't look like they've stepped
No,
back
I
much.
do think Alabama hired the right guy. You've heard this. Your dad was a coach. You didn't want to follow your dad anywhere. You wanted to be the next guy. But the only difference with Alabama football is that was a machine. He had it running. Now we're going to see how he can continue it, but it's not like it was 15 years ago where all those players were stuck there. If they wanted to leave, just like Caden Proctor, I think he wanted to leave. He left and then realized what he was leaving and wanted to go back because I think DeBoer is really good and he's won everywhere he's been, and now he has more resources, more funding, and a better name than he's ever been.
Yeah, and I would, the season he had last year, I would say that this win he just had on Saturday was every bit as high up when it comes to recruiting and money to bring into that. I mean, that just he proved his worth right there. I mean, we knew he was a great coach what he did at Washington, but you come in and beat Georgia, that's just that sets Alabama back on top and right where they were with Saban. So they're not going anywhere anytime soon.
No, and it was, they're showing highlights of all the 5-star recruits there, and obviously they're all those players are getting recruited by Georgia as well, and obviously they're Alabama visitors for the home game, but those kids were watching Georgia as well because they're essentially most of those kids get to pick which one is it's essentially which one do you want to go to. They both have an offer to both. Do you want to come? If not, we'll move on to the next one. That's how those two schools operate, um, and that's how the players, that have those options. Hey, do you want to come here? You have it. You know what we have. We're going to be playing for championships every year. Which one do you want to go to?
Yeah, I mean they're a factory right now, and I think Ohio State could maybe recruit with them, but it's right there, and I feel like Texas is
I
climbing
think Texas
fast,
will be there. Yeah.
and I'll give Tennessee some credit. I think they just pulled in the number one player in the country, so Tennessee's on the rise as well, and they look very good this year.
Yeah, just and just the last thing, college football. I believe next week the SEC and Big Ten are meeting in Nashville. They're going to stay at the Gaylord Resort there, the big nice one. If you've ever been there, and they're going to talk scheduling, they're going to talk everything, and they're going to try to set this up and squeeze out the ACC and Big 12. There's no doubt in my mind they're going to do essentially what college basketball has done to the mid majors. That's why Iowa and Iowa State don't play Drake and UNI anymore. They don't want to give them their shots. They got to have so many home games. They don't want to give those teams shots because if you don't give Drake, power or whatever um, what's the top level one wins? I can't remember what it is. I heard it today, but I forget what it was.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Quad one wins. Quad
Yeah,
one wins. If you don't give them that, they can't get in the tournament. And then you're going to get 2 more ACC teams, 2 more Big 12 teams, 2 more SEC teams in the NCAA tournament. That's what the Big 10 and Big 12. And I think it's going to go. This 12-team playoff is going to last 2-3 years, and it's going to go to 14. I think what's going to happen, it's going to go 4 teams out of the Big 10, 4 teams out of the SEC, 2 teams out of the Big 12, and 2 teams out of the ACC, and then 1 Power 5, and then 1 at large, like the next best team. I think that's going to be the next go round.
yeah, they're definitely trying to push their weight around, and I wouldn't be shocked if they get their way when it's all said and done. I mean, right now those are the 2 best conferences there are. I think the SEC is head and shoulders above the Big Ten right now, but as an Iowa fan, I have no problem with it because it gives Iowa a legit shot if you got to finish 4th in your conference and you're going to be guaranteed into the playoffs.
Yeah, the issue with it all is without the conferences and with the conferences being so big and uneven schedules, you're going to have teams that tie for 4th. So it's going to be who you played that year, who you didn't play, how they did against other teams, and then the committee's going to choose it.
I just wish they would. I don't know if this is a topic of conversation where if we're going to do this, these, if you're going to go top 4 guaranteed, let's bump up our non-conference schedules. There's no point of playing these teams that we're just paying them $1 million to come in and blast them. Let's have an SEC Big Ten showdown in week 3 or something like that would just, in my opinion, would make things a lot better in college football.
Correct. And if this goes through, the Iowa State game's in serious jeopardy because of that. And if I'm the Big Ten, before I'm going very far, I'm telling the SEC, if we're going to do any of this, you have to start playing 9 conference games like us. That's step one. So they have the same number of Power 5 games that everybody else does. And 2, play 9 conference games and play 1 SEC team or Big Ten, just like they do in the basketball where
Yep.
North Carolina played, or Alabama played Michigan, or it doesn't matter who's playing who, but you just match them up and you go about your business. And then that gives you 2 games to do whatever you want. And even then, maybe you say you got to play one of the other Power 5, you got to play the ACC. You can play another SEC team if you want. I mean, you got to have another power team. And then you get 1 bye game. But then you're going to talk about some teams aren't going to have as many home games. And that's what it's all about, because it's all about money.
Yeah, there's still a lot to come in this. Like you said, this playoff's going to expand, and there's going to be, it's always going to be evolving. And right now the SEC's, using their muscle to push things around with the Big Ten, but it'll look a lot different here in 5 years, in my opinion.
Yeah, 2031 is, I think, when a lot of things come up, and we'll know what's kind of coming in 2030, even maybe 2029 when they start talking. But I think 2031 is when everything starts again for the TV networks.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things shake out.
All right. Anything else? Kind of the big upset of the week was Ole Miss losing to Kentucky, which is, Kentucky gave Georgia all they wanted, and then somehow they got boat raced by South Carolina. So who knows? That's crazy. But Ole Miss could be. The scenarios happen immensely. If we're somehow, I'm going to use Iowa State as an example, but you could do it. Well, let's just do 2 other teams. Let's go with, BYU's undefeated right now, and Iowa State. I think those are the only 2 actually undefeated teams left in the Big 12. Now, Colorado's undefeated in conference and stuff, but I think those are only 2 undefeated, and they don't play each other. So if they're undefeated, one of them's going to win, be undefeated, and one of them's going to have 1 loss. Do you take that 1-loss team, or do you take a 9-3 Ole Miss that got 3rd or 4th in the SEC? That's going to be the argument, and I don't know the answer to that. Ole Miss is going to say we played the SEC. The BYU is going to say, or Iowa State, whichever one loses, doesn't matter. We got 1 loss.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough call. I guess a lot will see how good's Kentucky. How do they end up finishing?
Right.
If they end up, but let's say you got a team like Georgia or like Tennessee, and I don't know who they play, but hypothetically their losses are to Georgia, Alabama, and Texas, and they played them all within 10 points. It's going to be hard to keep that team out over a 1-loss Big 10 or Big 12 team.
Yeah. But yet you did lose to them all. That would be my argument. You lost to them all. You've proven you can't. You haven't proven you can't beat them, but you had your chance to beat them already. Why do you deserve another chance? You already had your chance.
Are we wanting the 12 best teams, or are we wanting to give people? It's just the argument we've had over and over on this. Are we putting the 12 best in? That's why Florida State didn't get in last year. They weren't one of the 4 best. They lost their quarterback. Did they deserve to get in? For sure. But were they one of the 4 best at the end? And I think that answer was clear that they were not. So
right.
I don't know.
But if you want the 4 best, I still don't. Even if you take out Florida State, they didn't put the 4 best in because Georgia was one of the best 4.
And I would agree with that. I don't know what they were doing with that one.
All right, let's move on. I know Trev wrote on this thing, the Heisman. That's not as big a deal to me. It's just lost its luster. I remember watching the Heisman when I was growing up, and then there was always one of the wasn't like a 30, but it was the Junction Boys, or always had something big on ESPN right after it that you wanted to watch, and they promoted the heck out of it. And the Heisman just has lost its luster because it's essentially the quarterback of the best team. You can pretty much pencil them in for the most part. Or
Yeah.
it's the quarterback of one of the top three teams that he has the best stats. Like this year, Jalen, Milrose, and the Jalen Milrose from Alabama.
Jalen Melrose, yeah.
He's going to win the Heisman if it ended today. But the best player, the most outstanding college football player, and it's not close, is Travis Hunter from Colorado.
Yeah,
He's
that's what.
doing it hands down. He played 144 snaps the other day. That is insane. And he made a heck of an interception. He made the game-saving fumble. He had a touchdown catch. I mean, he does it all.
Yeah, I agree with you. I kind of wrote down who I had. I had Melrose, Ward from Miami, and Travis Hunter, and I had just had Best by Travis Hunter. I would say Colorado would have to make the playoffs, and Alabama would probably have to have at least 2 losses, and then Travis Hunter, I think, could sneak in and win it. He does have Dion in his corner. I do think that'll help him get votes. So I wouldn't say
He'll get
Travis
to New
Hunter's
York.
out of it, but
Yeah, he'll
he's
get
gonna.
to New York. Yeah.
He's extremely good. I think Dion's son might get there as well. To be honest, I mean, like it or not, Dion's putting together a pretty good season. I think people were ready to write him off, and he's kind of turned the ship in Colorado. And he's probably one of my top 5 votes for Coach of the Year right now. The way what he's done at Colorado here this year after the Nebraska loss.
Yeah, I mean, just think of the season a little bit different if they don't complete that Hail Mary.
Mm-hmm.
He would have lost 2 in a row. The talk would have been so much different. And then who knows what happens in Central Florida. But that's a great win. It was big noon kickoff. Central Florida had a huge crowd. Central Florida was kind of the talk of the Big 12. And they went down there and it's a long trip from Colorado to Orlando and just boat raced them. I mean, it wasn't even close. I think they were a double-digit dog and won by over 20.
Yeah, he's got things. He's got things going in the right direction right now. I mean, they have some absolute studs on the field. I just don't know if they have the depth or the linemen to, get through a full Big 12 season.
And that's when Sanders, the quarterback, his son, has time. He's shown he's really, really good. He's a top 5, top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And you give him, he's an athlete and he can make plays. There's no question about it. It's just last year and then the first couple of games this year, he was just getting sacked 8 to 10 times a game, and you can't sustain that.
Yeah, he's a very good talent. Like you said, I think he'll be a top 5 pick and have a really good NFL career. And I'm guessing Travis Hunter's gone after this year as well. And wouldn't shock me if Dion followed to the NFL somewhere.
Yeah, that's Trev's conspiracy is the Cowboys are going to be too good to draft Sanders, but the quarterback, McCarthy's going to get fired. Jerry will hire Dion. Whoever drafts Sanders, they'll make a trade, and he'll still play for his dad, even though he needs somebody else. He's always had his dad as his coach, high school, college, and then the NFL.
Yeah,
he needs to learn from somebody else, but
they signed Dak to that big deal though, so that puts a little kibosh to it. But yeah, that wouldn't shock me if he ended up somewhere in the NFL coaching him before it's all said and done.
All right, and then kind of moving on here to the NFL, and Trevor wrote on here. Trevor always writes these out for us, and I do appreciate that. And it stinks they wasn't able to be here. The Jets drama. Did you see that and see what happened and everything with that?
I mean, as a Broncos fan, I watched the whole game, and that's the first time I've been excited about a Broncos game in 8 years. I mean, that defense was legit, and I'm kind of excited about it. But what are you talking about with all the drama?
After the game and the post game, Robert Saleh said something about was Aaron Rodgers getting his own team to jump off sides. I did not watch the game with his cadence and everything.
I mean, I don't
there
know
was
how.
something said that Saleh said it needs to be toned down, the cadence and everything. And Rodgers just was like, absolutely not. That's my game. I'm going to continue to do it. done it my whole career. If they can't figure it out, they need to not play or something like that.
Well, Rogers is a hard. He'd be a hard teammate. I mean, he's the talent's right there, one of the probably five best talents, but I don't know how great of a teammate he is. And if you've got that great of a hard count, maybe they're not practicing enough. I don't know. I'm not an NFL coach, but I don't know. I didn't pay attention to the drama. I was celebrating the Broncos' victory, is what I was doing.
Yeah, they look great. Bears with the win. Caleb Williams looked. If they can score points and they can look competent on offense, their defense is good enough. They're going to be all right. And the Rams are beat up. I don't know how the Rams beat the 49ers the week before. They're not good. Um, but and then the 49ers come back and win. Vikings look for real. Chiefs just keep winning, even though it was a very costly win for them. How about if you're going to blow up your knee, Patrick Mahomes is the one that does it. It's unbelievable. You're like, you got to be kidding me. My own quarterback, the best player in the league, and they're both just doing effort plays because it was a pick, and blew up his knee. Who do the Chiefs? Who do they trade for? Who should they trade for? Devontae Adams says he doesn't want to go to the Chiefs, which makes zero sense to me. But receivers are just egomaniacs. I think you almost have to be a receiver. He wants to be the man. He wants to be paid everything in the world. And he knows if he goes to the Chiefs, he's going to be second fiddle to Mahomes. He's going to be, a fiddle behind Travis Kelce. He's just going to be another guy, but he would win. And I don't know if winning is the most important thing for Devontae Adams. He wants to be the man.
Yeah, I was just kind of looking at that, and it doesn't matter who they put out there. In my opinion, Mahomes is just going to keep chugging away. But just some people that I kind of, I'd heard through the grapevine through the week would be like Amari Cooper or D Hop or some options that are, but I don't know. I don't. They'll probably get someone that we barely heard of, and he'll turn into a decent receiver. Mahomes just that machine just keeps going. I mean, he just continues to impress me, and as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they'd love to have Tyreek back, but I think that's a near impossible thing that could happen just by
Right.
reading
He's
some
signed a
stuff.
big deal too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a lot like Brady, where most of Brady's receivers
Hmm.
weren't the best. They were just guys that you kind of knew, you kind of heard, second or third contracts, just good players. The one time they did go get the best, Randy Moss, that's when they almost went undefeated. And that's why they were, because they did have the best quarterback and the best receiver. But yeah, I think they're just going to go get a run of the mill, maybe a little above average, but average receiver, and Mahomes and just Andy Reid. They know how to use people, and they'll be right there in the end. I have no doubt in my mind about it. As long
Yeah.
as 15 is at quarterback, they're going to be at the end.
I think, the one hold up, I don't know that Kelsey, I feel like Kelsey may have finally lost a step or two. He just doesn't seem to be the tight end he has been for the last 10 years. And I don't know if he's just in a funk from his summer with Taylor Swift or what, but he's not quite what he was. But I still wouldn't bet against him to win the AFC.
Is he kind of like Gronk was at the end, where who cares what he does the first 10 games, get him going the last 4 or 5, and then let's go to the playoffs?
Yeah, I
He
exactly.
needs to almost retire and then come back, kind of like Gronk did with the Buccaneers. He didn't want to go through all the crap. He just wanted to play at the end and win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I feel like, he, I think that's exactly and they're a lock for the playoffs unless Mahomes would get injured. I mean, they're probably going to be the 1 seed. I mean, maybe two, but I think, yeah, we could easily get to the playoffs and Kelsey turns into, you know, 2 touchdowns, 100 yards again. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do. But you got Andy Reid, who's arguably the best, and Patrick Mahomes, the best, right there. They'll be just fine.
Yeah. So, a couple other things. Um, you know, Chiefs are 4-0. Vikings, the Vikings are for real. Um, and that surprises me. And it's just proving that Sam Darnold, I think he was number 3 pick in the draft, just was never in the right situation. And that's, the Bears have messed up quarterbacks. The Panthers have messed up quarterbacks. The Jets have messed up quarterbacks. But yet Brock Purdy steps into the 49ers as the last pick of the draft, but goes into a great system. And they weren't a bad team where they're having the best. They're not going to pick in their top 10 because of the trade they made with the Bears for Trubisky and made their whole roster that they have now. The start of that, it's a whole different argument. But certain coaches, certain organizations know how to do it. The Packers would be one of those. The Chiefs with Andy Reid. I would say Andy Reid knows how to do it. I wouldn't say the Chiefs necessarily, but Andy Reid, you can't tell me they didn't know Patrick Mahomes was probably better than Alex Smith, but they knew it was best for everybody involved that Alex Smith played quarterback. Somehow the Packers figured out that the Jordan Love is pretty freaking good. And they were able to sit with him for several years because they had Rodgers. Sam Darnold comes in and has to play right away on bad teams, on several different teams. And it was amazing that they said last year as a backup to Purdy that he learned a lot from Purdy. In my estimation, that's not a good look for Sam Darnold. And I think it's even a worse look for the coaching staffs of the Jets and the Panthers before to not teach him that. And that goes to Brock Purdy, that goes to Shanahan, able to teach him last year how to be a good quarterback. And then this year, he wasn't supposed to be, but you get the opportunity and then you take advantage.
Yeah, he's, maybe the front runner for the MVP right now. I haven't looked at the odds, but he's got to be right there. And
Absolutely.
he's playing his way into a huge contract.
Oh,
And then
he's got 12 more. As long as he stays healthy, he's got 12 more years in the league for sure. At right now he's going to be a starting quarterback pay, but he's going to at least make $8 to $10 million a year for the next 15 years on average, maybe more.
And they got JJ McCarthy who can sit there for a few years. And
right.
No, the Vikings look good. I think they have the Jets this week, which I think will be a good game. I think the Jets are in close to must-win mode, and with all the tension going on, like you said, with the Jets, it'll be. I'd love to see the Vikings just stomp them, but I think it will be a good game, and we'll see if Darnold can keep it going because the Jets are a very good defense.
I'm not a Jets fan, but obviously I watch the Jets because there's 3 Cyclones that play big time plays for them and are big time talents. McDonald's having a great year, and again, he's another one. 15th pick in the draft. Ended the first round draft drought from Iowa State. Didn't play a lot last year. Wasn't great, but one of the top sack leaders right now in the league. Al Lazard just continues. He hitched his horse to the right person, and Aaron Rodgers, and has made a career out of that, making lots of money. And then Breece Hall, I think, just really is one of the best backs in the league. He was coming out of Iowa State, one of the top picks in the second round, which is about as high as you get anymore with running backs. And he's just really good. And one of the reasons they lost the game is he did not have a good game. I'll be the first to tell you, didn't watch the game on Saturday or on Sunday. I don't know if it was him not having a good game or the Broncos being awesome to stop the run. Probably, obviously, some of both.
Denver's defense was very, very good. I believe they have 12 sacks in the last 2 games. I think they sacked Baker Mayfield 7 times and Rodgers 5. So their defense has been, on point. Bo Nix is starting to play a little bit better, but it's still like watching the Hawkeyes with the Broncos offense. It's just not going to be a long-term thing, but I think Bo's got some potential. So the Jets will be better. The Broncos defense was extremely good that day.
All right. Anything else in the NFL?
I know we talked this I think it was whenever I was on here last about the survivor pools.
Oh, yep.
I'm still alive in one of them. There's only 7 of us left out of, what did I say, 243 or something. So
will you chop it up sometime or not?
I don't know. I probably would, but this week is brutal because I've already used the 49ers. So my 2 options are Seattle over the Giants or the Bears over Carolina.
Ooh, those aren't locks.
No, that's what.
Of
Didn't know what your
course, all
thoughts
the
on
locks
that
have
were.
lost anyway. So what the heck, right?
I mean, you could always take the Chiefs. They play the Saints at home. I don't think the Saints are too bad. It's a tough week to get through.
Yeah, I haven't. I didn't hear. I don't know how many are left in that Survivor at Circa. That was a big deal.
Well, about 30% of the people went out last week that were left because they were on the Jets over the Broncos. So that we went from 11 to 7 last week. So now it's this week, and I've used the 49ers. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
think
don't know.
you might almost have, or the Chiefs are at home because Monday night, isn't it?
It is, yes, and they're playing the Saints right now. My pick's in for Seattle, but I can change that. I've kind
Right.
of him-hawed. I don't know if the Carolina's looked 100 times better since Andy Dalton got put in there. So
Yeah,
it's
Red Rock is back.
and yeah, I don't know. It's not an easy week, that's for sure. I think the highest between all those three, it's like 5.5
Yeah.
is your spread. So I'm hoping I can get through this week with Seattle right now. We'll see how that goes.
Giants aren't good, so I agree with that. Is it in Seattle?
It is in Seattle.
That helps.
Yeah, and they're coming off a loss, but their offense looked pretty good. Their defense was terrible, but um, Detroit ran all over him. David Montgomery, he's about as consistent as they get in the NFL right now. He's
Right.
good for a touchdown and about 50 to 80 yards every game.
Right. And then if he can break, then I mean the other thing he's doing, he's catching the ball out of the backfield a little bit too. He had over 100 scrimmage yards the other day on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I think Detroit has the best running game. You throw Gibbs in there with him, and that's a you just don't ever get that running back like you used to have in the NFL,
You got to
which
have two,
sucks. There's
and
no
that's
Ladainian Tomlinsons floating around anymore. I mean, you're lucky to get 1,000 yard rushers anymore. It's a different league just from the fantasy world, that's for sure.
yeah. Kind of the last thing here I kind of want to talk about here. Sad, two well-known athletes have died this week. Dikembe Mutombo and Pete Rose. I want to start with Dikembe Mutombo. Not the Pete Rose has a whole. I mean, you could spend a whole podcast on that or a podcast series, a podcast life with Pete Rose and everything he comes to. But Dikembe Mutombo, he's right in our age wheelhouse. Played at Georgetown when Georgetown under John Thompson, when Georgetown was the team. They were us white guys from Iowa. They were the inner city, Big East tough. They'd go take on Jim Boeheim out of Syracuse and Luke Hornacek out of St. John's and in Villanova. And they had the long shorts and they would wear, the inner city type kids and everything. And I don't know if they really were that or anything, but it was Alonzo Mourning and Dikembe Mutombo and then Allen Iverson after them. And it's disheartening to me to see Georgetown fall where they have. But and then when he gets to the NBA and he always has that finger wag, he's a huge human being. And I think you listen to the same podcasts and sports talk that I do out of Des Moines. But one of my memories is him. He was with the Nuggets laying on the floor. They beat the Supersonics in Seattle, game 5. It was number 1 versus number 8. He's hugging the ball and he's laying on the ground. That's my lasting image of Dikembe Mutombo.
Yeah, and that was the first time a 1, I believe, had ever beat an 8 in the NBA. And in our lifetime, I would say, one of the top 5 defensive players we ever saw in the NBA. And he was a huge ambassador for the NBA overseas. I mean, he gave his life to, I'm not sure where he's from. He's from Nigeria or Africa or something, but he put a lot of time and effort in over there. I think he's the first NBA ambassador. He was a great human. Probably not as successful in his sport that Pete Rose was, because he's one of the greatest ever. But when it comes to humans, he's on the whole different spectrum than where Pete
Yeah.
Rose was.
Yeah.
And that's why he's not in the Hall of Fame, which it's a whole nother topic. It's probably a travesty, but yeah, Pete Rose was, and we saw him late in his, at his tail end, but I still remember him. You still see highlights, and I believe he made an All-Star game at 5 different
Yeah, I heard
positions.
that today. Yeah, I listened. Yeah, at first third and second on the infield, and then left and right. And like they made the joke today that he would have been six because he could have played DH if he'd have played in the American League.
For sure. I mean, he was, one of the probably 10 best baseball players of all time. And it's sad just to watch his fall from grace. But, he will be remembered as one of the best baseball players. And that's why I feel like he should be in the Hall of Fame. If you want to put a little asterisk that he got banned for gambling, that's fine. But you can't tell the story of baseball without Pete Rose.
Yeah, and that's a again we could talk a long time about that, but Pete Rose, Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Roger Clemens, there's probably 5 other guys. Put them in, put a paragraph under their bust that they did this, they were accused of this, whatever you want to say, but you made it, and you can't tell the story of baseball without those guys.
Yeah, it's
Mark McGwire and
ridiculous.
Sammy Sosa revitalized baseball in the late 90s after the strike and everything else like that. Those few years there where they were hitting 60 to 70 home runs for about 3 straight years, you couldn't, I mean, people wouldn't imagine. They cut into regular TV to watch that stuff. I mean, that would never happen. I mean, Ohtani had one of the best years ever. Aaron Judge had one of the best years ever, and you barely hear about it at all.
Yeah, the Bond Sosa summer was probably and I don't like either one of those teams. That's probably my most memorable summer of baseball when those two were duking it out. And, Bonds' year where he broke everything was phenomenal as well. And Roger Clemens, who, maybe the best pitcher of our lifetime, is not in there. I don't know. They need to be in, and then you can add a little blurb if you want, but they are some of the best baseball players ever, just like Pete Rose.
Yeah, I have a Pete Rose signed ball. I saw him in Vegas. I know everybody's shocked at that. It was in Vegas. I think it was in Caesar's Palace. I saw him and got a ball signed by him. And he has his faults. We all do. None of us are perfect. We all do things we wish we could do different. And he has a lot of things I think that he would have loved to do different. But obviously I paid him. I paid the thing. I don't remember how much I paid. Doesn't matter. And there's a line of people, but he spent time. He asked where I was from. I said Iowa. And he talked about he was involved with the UFC, and I'm not a UFC guy, but I think there's a big, kind of group or ever out of Davenport in the Quad Cities that were kind of big into UFC, and he was talking about that and everything. And so, right or wrong, he made me feel like he cared a little bit for that 5-minute interaction with him. And he was a good dude when I was with him, and he spent time. He didn't just sign it and move on and wasn't an asshole about it.
Yeah, he's definitely someone that nobody's gonna forget anytime soon, and even the next generation will still, when you watch YouTube or anything, you're gonna see Pete Rose. I mean, when you think of someone sliding, head first, it's Pete Rose every time. I mean, it's just the
Taken out,
picture you get.
yeah, the All-Star game are just nobody tries hard, and you watch him take out the catcher in the All-Star game. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just different, and I do think he gets put in the Hall of Fame relatively soon now. I could be way wrong in that, but I do think he does now. It was a lifetime ban, and unfortunately, his lifetime is over, so now put him in.
Yeah, I don't know. That'll be interesting if they do. Are they opening the floodgates and letting them all in then, or what are we doing with that? Is Bonds the next to come then?
I mean, see, you got to think like Clemens and Bonds. I mean, they technically still have a lot of life left in them. If they, they're 60 years old or whatever. I don't know. I think they all should be in it. That's just me, but
I agree 100%.
It wasn't against the rules. They didn't
Yep.
test. I shouldn't say it was against the rules. They didn't test for it, so they really didn't care. Nobody cared until all the records got broke and somebody started talking about stuff. I think, and I don't even know if it was Bond so much. It was the other players like Brady Anderson hits 58 home runs one year and then goes right back down. Ryan Braun from Milwaukee hit like 57 home runs for like 3 straight years and had never even come close to that. Barry Bonds hit lots of home runs. Was a great baseball player way before.
Yeah,
it was some of that other guys that just 1 or 2 years it was just obvious what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean,
It was obvious what Bonds was doing too. I know, and all those guys.
he got huge, but I mean, he's still probably the best baseball player that I can remember. I mean, I don't remember seeing Pete Rose enough to say he was even close to Barry Bonds. I'm sure he might have been, but my era when I was, watching baseball hardcore through now, it's Bonds. I mean, Shohei looks really good right now, but he's gonna have to do it for another 10 years and throw some
Right.
of that pitching in there, and then he's gonna have a legit case.
Yeah, Otani, if he can continue this offensive, and then come back next year and pitch and get 50-50 and pitch and be really good at pitching, then you're going to do that for 3 straight years. Then you're going to start talking about it.
He's gonna be right there with Babe Ruth if he can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's won MVPs, right?
I believe so, yes.
And he's gotten top 2 or 3 in the Cy Young already. If somehow he could get a Cy Young, I mean, there's no way he's going to win MVP and a Cy Young. I wouldn't think the same year, but if he could go win a Cy Young in the next couple of years, you're going to have more chatter of being the best ever. If you have an MVP and a Cy Young to your name.
Yep.
Speaking of somebody that's not necessarily a good human, Cy Young. But
yeah.
All right. Anything else? That's really about all I have. We're just shy of an hour. I always like going just right about an hour here. Again, thanks for jumping in real late. I know you're always willing to do that, and we do thank you for that.
No, I'm just gonna go hopefully watch the Mets close this series out. They're up 3-2 in the 6th, so we can see if they can close the Brewers out and move on.
Yeah, the AL Central is just absolute domination in the playoffs so far. The Royals and the Tigers are advanced. Took out the Orioles and the Astros. Astros first time in like 7 or 8 years. They're not going to be in the ALCS. And the Twins had the absolute. I saw a stat today on August 11th. The Tigers had a 0.2% chance of making the playoffs, and they were 10.5 games out of the playoffs. And they're like 33-10 cents, now 34-10. And the Twins had a 98% chance to go to the playoffs at that time, and they did not. They didn't make it by 4 games. They wasn't even close. They were 4 games out when it was all said and done.
Hopefully,
most utter bitter collapse of all time in baseball history, in my opinion. And it all comes back to the Pohlad family being cheap. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Hopefully, you put a little money on Detroit when they had a 0.2% chance of making it.
I'm sure there's a lot of money put on them at that time.
Yep.
And they traded the best player. That's the even more crazy thing. At the trade deadline. So, but all right. Well, thanks a lot. And I need to go to the Elks and get your money and stuff for that. So, and then I'll see you on Saturday.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.